What's up, everybody? I'm live here. A little early morning, pre-draft press conference, live stream some thoughts going into the 2023 NHL draft for the Flyers. It should be interesting to kind of see what happens here, but I figured I'd go live this morning since there's the press conference with Danny Briere and Brent Flair. So, yeah, welcome. Just going to tweet this out real quick. Putting this out. There we go. Should be starting up here in a couple of minutes. What's up, Brian? How are you, my friend? Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, so I'm assuming that this is going to get streamed. If it's not, I'll end the stream, obviously, because the whole point is to kind of watch along. But I was just putting it out a little bit. So apologize for that. But Ryan, what's up, brother? How are you, my friend? What's up, Sean? I caught the a little bit of the overtime. I saw the goal, Vecchione. It's probably why there's a lot of bags under my eyes. Yeah, I was able to catch that, at least that goal, and it was good to see. I was happy for a guy like Vecchione because you know, being a former Flyer, it was him. Logan Day was on the Phantoms a little bit last year. Also, I believe played in Reading too, and Matthew Strome. So a couple of former Flyers and Phantoms in that mix. But again, I'm still trying to see here if the stream will be put online. I'm hoping that would be sweet if it is. But it'll be interesting. Just banging my watch on my desk. But yeah, I mean, Flyers have 10 picks this draft. They'll definitely be having more. I have a feeling they're definitely going to trade for more, and they go from pick 22 to 87. So I'm assuming that they're going to add another pick in there as well, and try to add something else as the days kind of go along here. There was a lot of rumors last night that something was going to be happening, and then nothing did. It was kind of crazy how that was all unfolding. But we will see. We'll see what happens coming up, and if Danny and Flair actually, give us some information that's a little bit different than usual. We'll see though. All right. What's up, Dylan? How are you, my friend? All right, so it's 11 a.m. Still trying to wait and see if Flyers are going to be going live here. If they are, I will put the stream here on the thing. But again, this is a little bit more laid back than usual. With obviously the way that I do the show and everything. So it's a little bit it's a little more laid back. So I apologize if it's not as upbeat as usual. Because usually we got Google on and all that stuff, and there's guests right after and everything. So Dylan, I hear you, dude. It was not fun when when Hackstall was coach, because everything was like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. I was like, oh my God. And I mean, I was younger and I was always excited, so it didn't bother me. But man, it was not ideal. I'm still hoping to see, waiting to see here if the Flyers are going to be putting this up as a stream. It seems like it's going to be. And I'm hoping that is the case. But, sometimes, they don't stream it. Sometimes they will. I still haven't gotten a tweet yet. Might not have started yet. I'm not too sure. But there's a lot of interesting stuff here that's kind of going to play out with the Flyers. And, especially because you got Hayes and TK and all these other guys, like who they trade and who they don't trade and everything. So it'll be interesting just to kind of see what the return, I guess, is for a lot of these guys. Oh, excuse me, because a lot of it can kind of change. So we'll see what happens there. Apparently, the Avalanche are not re-signing Eric Johnson. It's interesting. Do you think Wayne Simmons retires? Only played 18 games this season. I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think, there might be a team out there in the NHL that might want Simmer for a playoff run or something like that. I'm not sure, to be honest. Maybe. I mean, I have, like, I can't see him not getting a contract. That's for sure. But I do think that he'll, at least be able to play in the AHL, like, for sure. Like there's no way to me that people don't think he's not good enough. Yeah, no, I mean, I have a feeling that he probably would play if that would be the case. All right, still a couple minutes here. I'm still waiting to see if this goes live. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten a tweet yet or anything like that, so still waiting to see kind of what happens here. Yeah, that goal last night was nuts too. It was like right at the goal mouth, tipped in. It was like slam dunk. Yeah, usually it takes a couple minutes. So I wonder if it's on the YouTube as well. Let me look that up. I don't see anything on there, so I've been constantly refreshing my Twitter just to see if it kind of comes up, but we'll see. I'm hoping they go live because it would be nice. It's a lot of good information to have, and for me, obviously, I'm not there, so the best thing I can go off of is the quotes from Twitter. Yep, there it is. Okay. All right, let me share my screen.
it's good. You can kind of feel the energy too from our staff and our amateur scouts. Having to dig in a little deeper. You prepare going into it thinking about the 7th pick, but now all of a sudden, you're telling them, well, you gotta know the list all the way down because there's might be something different. And then it was good because they got a little bit of prep. They were in town. We were together in Buffalo. They were in town after that. So it forced them to dig in a little deeper for their list, so you can find or feel the excitement on their part.
Danny, did you reach out to get an interview with Matt Mitchkov before the draft?
I believe we'll have the chance to meet with him. Yes.
You mentioned
Good
the
to know.
calls that are coming. Is there, with 7 and 22, it's some pretty good ammunition. Is there a chance you could move up, or if you do move, would it be more likely that you would move back and sort of stockpile?
Honestly, everything's on the table. We've had discussions in both directions. It would kind of have to make sense. I guess for both sides, whoever's involved. Like I said, I'm not taking anything off, but I would think that if something like that were to happen, it's probably going to be on the draft floor, depending how the board falls during that day.
Just the way just the way it always works. We have layers of players at certain levels. Obviously, if the players fall into a point where you think you have a chance to move up and you feel the price is worth it to move up, then we'll try it. Again, if our list falls quickly and we feel we can move back and potentially get the same player a little bit later, then we'll try to do that. So that's what you're trying to do and trying to evaluate on the draft floor.
Right. There's a lot of excitement around this draft, not just because of the top guys, obviously, but just in general about the depth. I guess, what's your evaluation of the draft? Do you agree that is a stronger than average draft? And if so, where do you see kind of the drop off where it becomes more of a normal group?
Well, I think it's pretty well known at the top of the draft. Obviously, you have some elite players, and but it has been known as a deep draft. I think you go right through the second round. I think there's different layers that we've identified of, like I just said, there's different layers as far as guys that we feel are potentially top 6 forwards or whatever. There's players that we're confident are going to play but might not have the same ceiling. So those are all the things we evaluate. But it is a deep draft, I think, and we're confident we're going to get a good player at 22. And if we add more picks, we're confident we're going to get some good players there throughout the early rounds. And again, our guys spend a lot of time trying to identify guys for late round picks as well. So
The buzz around the draft is a lot of quality forwards, some quality defensemen, maybe not as many forwards.
Yeah.
When you factor in though some of the Russians beyond Michkov, a couple of them are defensemen, forward too. Do you feel that there's sufficient depth throughout the top round that you feel comfortable with being able to get a quality player pretty much wherever you might be taking beyond?
are you talking specifically defensemen or for?
Well, just in general. Yeah, I mean, one of the questions is about defensemen, so let me phrase it better. When you factor in the Russians beyond Michkov, and they're all kind of X factors because of what's involved in bringing guys over. Do you feel that there's an opportunity maybe the guys will fall to you or in the 22 range you might not otherwise be there?
Possibly, yeah. No, but we've spent a lot of time. We're like every other team as far as the Russian players. It's a good year in Russia. Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to be there personally, but Kenny Hudakov, our Russian scout, have met with these players. I've spent a lot of time watching them live. We spend a lot of time watching them video. So there are some quality players from Russia that are going to go high in this draft, probably before we pick, maybe even at 22. So that's an evaluation. Obviously, we'll put our list together as we see fit, but for whatever reason, it is a strong year in Russia, and we'll have to make a decision.
And do you think the depth of defensemen specifically might be a little bit better than?
No, I don't think so. No, there are some quality defensemen, I think, in the first round, but overall, I don't think it's a real deep draft for defensemen, no.
And as we know, around this time, there's a ton of trade discussion with other teams. When we talked to Kevin Hayes at the end of the season, he said he probably would learn whether he'd be a flyer or not around the draft. Like, where do things stand with Kevin? Have you had a lot of dialogue with other teams?
Nothing has really changed on that. We still value Kevin. We still think he can help. It's tough to tell at this point. He's big 6'5" centermen they're not easy to find, and it's not like free agency is really deep there with centermen. So to replace them would be tough as well. So right now my stance hasn't changed on that.
Dan, you mentioned in one of your press conferences that the left side was something that you wanted to look at. Is it practical to try to get something there through the draft because of the fact that it might be a year or two, or free agency or trade? That's something you're looking at?
Well, it's certainly not at the top of the draft. You got to be careful to, take the best player available for us. That's going to be the goal. You have to be careful because that player is probably not going to be here for another few years. Things can change by that time, and your lineup and your roster. So I want to be careful with trying to push for just strictly one position at the top of the draft.
Danny, obviously, a lot of this is going to depend on how the draft falls ahead of you guys and whatnot. But
I agree with that.
There's of
For
course a lot
number
of talk
7,
about
for
Mitch
sure.
Buff, that he could potentially be there at 7. Does the fact that you guys now have an additional first, does that maybe give you, more of a willingness to take a swing because you have that second pick?
I don't want to see it that way. I still want to take the best player available for us at that moment, not thinking, okay, now because I have that other pick, it changes what I'm going to try to do. I'd rather we go with the same mindset, take the player that's going to be the best player for us, depending, where we're at in the organization. So I'm not looking at it where, okay, because we have different picks, that's going to change how we approach number 7.
I guess kind of as a follow-up to that, you guys historically, regardless of the GM, have been a pretty intangible focused organization in the draft in terms of valuing character, in terms of valuing the personality of the player.
Mm-hmm.
With Mitchkov, you really, and by your own admission, haven't really had a chance to speak with him to the depth that you would normally at that, especially high up in the draft.
Yep.
Does that give you pause, given the fact that you guys so know character?
Yeah, we're trying to get as much information, and we'll spend a little bit of time with him, and we'll try to get as much information as we can and make our decision after that.
We do a lot of background. We do talk to players on this team. We've talked to coaches, our staff have talked to. So we've done a lot of our background, and we'll spend time with him and his family, and get a comfort level and then make a decision appropriately.
What are the defining characteristics in these players that you guys are looking for, whether that be like certain skill sets or, as mentioned, the character and the leadership potential?
Well, we want the 6'6" centerman that can skate like the wind, hit everybody on the ice, and score 50 goals a year. There's not too many of those, but hockey sense is an important one for us. Character is an important one. You could go down the list. There's lots of traits, and there's no perfect players out there. So you try to find the players that maybe have the most of those traits. It could be physicality, speed, or important hockey sense. We talked about skill level, characters, and a big one. And we're at the obviously kind of I wouldn't say the start of a rebuild, but we're pretty early on in our process. So there's a lot of things that we need. That's just a reality. So we'll try to find the best player for us at that spot.
Along with that, a lot of the additions that you've made recently have, in my opinion, focused a lot on the development of a player and making sure that they have all the tools that they need in order to maximize their potential. Do you see that as another way to look at these players and not only identifying their strengths, but their weaknesses, and knowing that you have the resources within your own organization to help turn those into strengths? Yeah,
I feel that, the draft for us is going to be critical, and the next step of that is player development. And we've had a lot of people there to help in that department. That it's something we take very seriously. Try to help these players become the best players they can be. So adding Patrick Sharp and John LeClaire, they're going to have a big say in that, and I'm really excited about those two guys coming aboard to kind of show what they've been through. And they've had an interesting career path. I had the chance to see John Leclerc myself as a young boy in Montreal when he started, and then it wasn't an easy road for him. Yeah, he won the Stanley Cup early, but they were pretty tough on him, and he gets traded to Philadelphia and became a superstar here. That was pretty cool to see. Look at Patrick Sharp, what he's been through early in his career. I think that's tremendous experience that they'll be able to share with our young guys. They haven't had the cleanest and easy path to winning Stanley Cups and being star players. So I think it's pretty cool that they'll be able to share that with young players.
And as it stands right now going into the draft, you're set to pick at number 22, and then you don't pick again until number 87. Do you have any aspirations of trying to pick up some picks in that?
We'd like to. Yeah, we'd like to. That's not a secret. We'd like to add, and like Brent said, there's some depth in this draft. So if we have the chance, yes, we would like to add.
They had to get another second.
In that gap between was it 22 and 87.
Right. We know Danny's been involved with your guys' drafts, I think, since 2020, but this is the first time he's been GM. Can you maybe explain the dynamic between you and Danny and kind of who has the final say, or how much Danny will be involved in getting his voice in there?
Well, it hasn't really changed much, to be honest with you. Danny spent a lot of time. We've been on the road together a lot over the last couple of years, evaluating the same players. So even when he took over, he had a pretty good idea where we each stand on especially the players at the top of the draft that he was aware of. And we have a similar philosophy. So he has some different ideas of approaches that he's addressed with our staff and our scouts and what he thinks. And but it's been pretty, as far as our amateur scouting side, it's been pretty easy transition, to be honest with you.
I guess kind of as a follow-up to that, and this is to both of you. Over the last few drafts, there has kind of been, and Brent, you've spoke to this, it's kind of been a little bit of an organizational pivot in terms of taking maybe bigger swings. Cutter Gauthier is a really high upside player, even Samu Tuamala, with the skating ability, it's high upside. Are you guys still maybe leaning towards that, looking to maybe take a little bit more risk to potentially have the higher reward?
In some cases, yeah. I think you got to measure it. It depends where you pick to. I think there's certain players it depends what the risk is. If the risk is character and lack of drive or lack of compete, that's a big risk for me. And those are risks that tend to work against it down the road, even if they do play. But the risk, if it's just a player needs to get stronger, or there's skating issues that our staff feel like it can be addressed, or whatever the issue is, that's a thing that we can help with and fix. Then we're willing to take those swings if we think the ceiling's that much higher for a particular player.
Brent, Connor Bedard's side, can you talk about the strength of the WHL class this year?
Yeah, it's actually it's been a good year out there. There's goaltenders, there's a couple of defensemen, there's some centermen. Between Jagger, Danielson up the middle, then you got Molendyke, you got Bjarnason in net. Honzik is a big checks playing out there. So it's a good draft. It's been a good year for the West, and they're spread out throughout there. So we spent a lot of time out there in the prairies.
Brent, there's 4 kids in the U.S. national team program that go in the top 15 even. When you look at where those guys project, and the 2019 group is sort of the class for that program, do you project, these guys in this year's group, if we're talking 5 years from now, do they project to be at that level of like a Zegras, a Caulfield, a Boldy, a York, or will they be close to that if they continue on their progression?
Possibly, yeah. They're different players. I guess this group is probably a little smaller, you could say, with the exception of Hughes. But this group is, that line especially has been dynamic. They've torn apart the USHL. I think they've all broken records, I think. So, and each are different. Bro's an elite hockey sense guy, and obviously not a very big body. Smith is highly skilled, makes plays, sees the ice so well. Leonard's more of a power guy, but drives. He's got skill himself, speed. And then Moore's on a second line, which normally a lot of years he'd be a first line center. So it's just the way it is. But it was an exciting group, and obviously it's fun to evaluate top players like that. So, but to compare, that group was pretty special.
Is there a danger in overvaluing small sample sizes, like the under 18s, high profile?
Yes, I'll answer your question. Yes, it is.
Going back to that line you mentioned for the U.S. National Team Development Program, obviously you guys aren't going to give away your secret sauce here, but what's the risk there of, maybe it turns out that two of those guys are really carrying the line and one of the guys is a passenger. And how do you guys try to determine, whether maybe one of those guys is overrated and one of those guys might be underrated and whatnot?
Well, in some cases, I think you're referring to Leonard probably, but you watch the games when he's on a different line, see how he drives the line. In other cases, you watch, we've seen these kids for not just this year. These kids have been high profile players for a few years now. So they've been on the radar. But again, you see when Leonard was playing with Moore, or you see when Pro's on a different line, we've seen these guys. We have guys almost at every game there. It's just one of the most over-scouted teams in the history of hockey, probably.
I'm curious, obviously outside of the top 2 or 3, all these guys are going to go back for another year, junior college, whatever it is. But what's the logical time frame, especially with number 7, that you could see whoever you get in a Flyers uniform? Do you want somebody who could be more ready in a year, or are you okay with they go like Cutter's doing 2 years, 3 years, maybe in college?
We want the best player 3-4 years down the road. Dan, I'm not going to speak, but I think we're agreeing on that. It's not a rush as far as who's going to be played first. There's a lot of guys that'll play sooner, but it's who's become the best NHL player is our focus.
I agree with that. It's about the development of the player. I'm not worried if it's 3, 4, 5 years down the road that they become the best they can be. I'm not worried about next year or the year after.
In an ideal world, you guys like to pick one goalie somewhere along the way?
Well, we're again, if possible, but it's pretty exciting what's going on, and what's coming up, not just with the Flyers, but the farm system too. We have some good goalies coming up, guys that could turn out to be high end. So, we'd like, if possible, to find another one and keep growing that. But I don't think in the past that's always been a strength, Flyers. So it's exciting knowing that we have some prospects that could develop into really high-end goaltenders.
In saying that, it's a pretty good goalie draft. There's depth at the goaltending position. I think you'll see as soon as the first one goes, there's going to be a string of them go. But there is some depth in that position, and typically we've always tried to take a goalie. Now if they all go, then you're not just drafting a goalie to draft a goalie. But there's some depth, so I would assume at some point we have a chance to get one.
For Danny or Brian, I know it's best player available pretty early in the draft for you guys, but is there an area that maybe you guys want to replenish a little bit later in the draft?
Like we said, we got some bunch of different positions. We're not that deep in any position. A right wing, I guess you could say that we have depth, but again, there's some quality players, and if it's the best player significantly, then we'll have another right winger. But yeah, no, we have some holes to fill, and we'll evaluate that. It's always if it comes and the players are equal and our guys are 50-50, maybe we go by position, but we do our list and we try to stick by it as best as we can.
And we have to be careful too. Again, we discussed that earlier about 3, 4, 5 years down the road, the roster is going to be completely different. So you have to be careful diving into that too much.
Can you guys share a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes and the conversations that you guys are having with your scouts? Is this like multiple times a day they're like, hey, listen, I think we need to like move this guy on our list, like that kind of massaging of your list?
Yeah, no, we had it's a little longer. We decided to do our final meetings right after the combine, just so Yoke didn't have to go back and forth from Europe 4 times. But so yeah, they spent the whole week together in Buffalo, and then the whole week last week here, and it got fairly heated there. I think I had to shut it down the last day just to get everybody away from each other and take a few days, take the weekend to come back. So, and I spoke to pretty much every other day. I've spoken to guys, and they want to tweak certain things, and certain things I didn't like at the time, but you let slide, and I can adjust it as we want to. But just the way it works, and we'll continue to discuss certain players and right up until the draft. But our list is in pretty good shape right now, and I think there's probably, I'd say 90% complete, and then I think there will be some tweaks through some final interviews, and also so just some last minute information sometimes, or just strong feelings, especially some of the guys in the later rounds that, we want guys that really want to fight for somebody. I don't want to just take a name just because he's on your list. Like if someone needs to have some passion about the player. For me, when you're drafting a player late.
How much was changed this last week?
How much will it?
How much what sort of information was changed?
Sometimes it's off ice scenarios. Sometimes it's injury related. We'll get further, we find out certain things at the combine or through, and we get MRI information for our doctors, and they express concern or green light it, whatever. But there's also some, our strength guys, they spend a lot of time watching all the workouts up there, get all the data, and they run it. And they have some concerns about certain body types of certain players and whether they can get stronger, gain weight, who are great athletes, who aren't. And we're drafted, we're not the NFL, so we're drafting kids when they're 17, 18 years old. And you've seen them all. Some of these kids they're boys. So as long as our guys are comfortable that we can work with them, get them stronger, and hopefully become NHL players one day, then we'll draft them. And in some cases, it's a lost cause. Like they're just too small or too thin or not athletic. And when you're talking about a player that may be a below average skater at this point, if it's just simply strength related, then we can work with that. But if he's fundamentally flawed and just not very athletic, then it's a tough road to overcome.
Danny, there's been some speculation around the league that you guys may potentially even pick up another first round pick before the draft. Obviously, you can't predict what's going to happen, but do you have any optimism that you guys could potentially hit the draft with 3 first rounders rather than just 2?
If someone wants to give us another pick, we'd take it, gladly take it. We're having discussions with different team. I probably say it's not likely, but we're definitely looking at every avenue. And I would love to give another jolt to our amateur scouts to dive in and even deeper in their list. We're trying, no doubt about it, but you need a dancing partner as well. So I don't know if it's realistic.
You mentioned that your roster needs 3 more years from now might be different than the ones you have right now. So when you do have a tie, for example, if you have a player rated similarly in terms of just pure skill, how do you go about kind of rating positional needs? Are you looking now? Or are you looking at
Especially early on, I think we will dive deeper and deeper and deeper into it, try to find, and we'll ask our guys to find something. There's got to be a difference somewhere. So it's kind of go back to videos, to their charts, to the interviews. So you try to just get deeper into those 2 players and find the one trait that can make the difference. That's kind of my approach with it, more than, especially early in the draft, more than the position that they play in.
that's like last?
I would prefer that, it doesn't come down to just position. I'd rather have our guys find a trait that separates the 2.
You mentioned being open for business and willing to listen on anyone. Did you notice a considerable uptick in phone calls once you said that, like in terms of interest from your players?
I've seen an uptick probably this week. I think it felt like the guys are getting down to business a little bit more, getting inside what the 10-day window to the draft. So I'd have to say this week was probably a time where I started getting more return calls.
Thanks.
All right.
Zachary, you have your ticket?
All right, there it is. Let me switch this back over. Here we go. Yeah, there it is. Flyers pre-draft press conference. So a couple things. Doesn't seem like they're going to be getting another first. 7-22 probably is the way to go. If Michkov's there, it seems like they're going to take him. A lot of goalies. Definitely they're open to adding another goaltender, which I think is good because we have a pretty good goaltending, system. Yeah, I mean, there was mention of the WHL as well. I mean, so a lot of different things. It seems like they want to add a second rounder. Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems that way. I mean, it's really hard, to kind of figure out a lot of this stuff. It's a lot of rumors and it's a lot of, what they could do, what they, they might not do. It's so hard to predict who they'll take and everything. So, I think that there's a good list of guys that you definitely could get. specifically at 7, around 22. Some guys could even drop. Some guy that could go in the mid-teens might fall to 22, or maybe even before that. It's really interesting to kind of see how it all goes down. So we'll see. It'll be interesting, especially because you have so many different variables on what can happen throughout the entire draft. Yeah, exactly. I agree. I think you're gonna get a good player. Like there's so many different guys. For me, it's Willander. I think that's who they take at 7. It seems like I just have a feeling that they go D. Specifically right-handed D, because there are some pretty good D in the draft. It's not the best draft for defensemen, as obviously Flair said as well. It's just not. It's a very forward-loaded draft, especially early on. But it doesn't seem like that they're going to add another first. So 7 and 22 look like they're going to be it. It wouldn't shock me if they add something else in the later rounds, or a second rounder. That would make sense to me. So I'm not too sure. I mean, I like Reinbacher too. That's one that I like. Leonard, I'd be fine with. I really wanted Smith, but I don't think he's going past 5, unfortunately. And obviously, if Michkov falls, then I think you take him. But I think for me, it's probably Reinbacher, or Willander. Those are my two, I think. It'll be interesting though, because I think the biggest thing is just adding that other second rounder. Because, excuse me, if you add that other second rounder, you're gonna be able to add another. I mean, like, but if it stays the way it is right now, they wouldn't pick from 22 to 87. So it'll be interesting. But we'll see. It's interesting to kind of see what happens. Yeah, Hayes. That's interesting. What Briere said. He's like, I tweeted it. He said we still value Kevin. We still think he can help us. I wonder if they, because to me that sounds like they haven't really found a partner, or maybe they're still trying to drive up the price on him by saying that. Like, he still mentions centerman, that, that he is a centerman and all that. Like, he, played most of the season at wing last year. Like, they still mention he is a center, and, he can't really find guys that are 6'5". Like, I wonder if they add another, if they end up moving him and try to add another pick, by doing that, or if it's a different type of trade. Oh, we'll see. It'll be interesting. I mean, like, there's so many different variables to this, and yeah, and the one thing that I did like was the fact that they don't seem rushed about this, and I'm completely fine with that. This is a tweet from Bill Meltzer. He said Flair and Briere both said they care much more about where they project players in 3 to 4 years than on which ones may debut the soonest in the NHL. So that's true as well. Like, there's a lot of different guys that can end up being Flyers or Phantoms in a couple of years, or that might take some time, like all of that stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, they could, Joe. So you're saying they move? Tristan, I don't think they're getting Cole Caulfield, buddy. I think he's there's literally no way that he would get traded. Yeah, no, I agree. I think, the more time it takes, yeah, and I'm fine with it, because it's like you're rebuilding. Like, you're gonna take that time to evaluate your players and evaluate your team and all of that stuff. And I have no issue with, getting these guys and just taking as much time as possible. So, but it's really interesting about Hayes. Like, I really wonder if they trade him up until the draft or if they just haven't been able to, like, I think they've definitely been able to, obviously it was rumored, talked about that they almost had a deal. So clearly they've been talking. But I just wonder if they're still trying to drive up the price on him. Because I think the hardest thing is just the fact that you bundle in everything that Tort said about him publicly and kind of what he said publicly and all that stuff. Like that stuff is part of it too. So it's interesting to kind of see. Especially if you have to retain the full contract. Or not the full 50%, because that's max. That's the most interesting thing is like how much can you really retain, to be honest. So we'll see. I did want to mention too, I do have the call line open like I normally do for the show if anybody wants to ring in. But the one thing that yeah, for sure, Mr. Swister, I agree. It's going to take time, and you have to figure out all that stuff and kind of what's going to happen with that. But what's up, buddy?
What's up, Chris?
How are
What's up? So, what do you think? What do you think about the draft today?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're trying to add. They definitely seem like they want to add another second. It seems like the first is probably unlikely. So we'll see. It'll be interesting for sure.
So, the reason why I did say Colin Caulfield because you know he's a great player.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we can really afford Colin Caulfield because I dare he has a higher cap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think he makes $9 million. Like we'd have to trade a lot. So
I mean, we don't have a chance to get him right now. He's on 8 years now.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like there's no way that you're getting him. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think it's happening at all. It just doesn't make any sense for Montreal. I mean, they're in the same boat as us, and he's one of the best young players.
I mean,
so
they do have guys like Caulfield, but they're terrible at times.
Yeah, and I think that and someone put it in the chat too. Is we could have had Caulfield for free. So it's like I think the Flyers, they valued York over him, and York seems like a great pick. So I think the Caulfield train's kind of rolled by, to be honest.
I mean, I don't know, but I'm assuming that he's staying with us next season. I don't know.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't really see it as him being. I think he's going to get traded. I just think the return might be a little underwhelming, to be honest. Now that I'm hearing all this stuff, and you got, they're still trying to drive the price up on him and everything.
Breer says he might like stay with us, but they're trying to retain his contract.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the only way that they're going to do it, that they're going to trade him, is if they have they're going to have to retain at least 50%, 40% of his contract. So,
do you think we should get DeBrincat right now because he's on his last deal now?
No, I don't. I think right now it's like we're not at the point to like take a swing at those guys. And I think for DeBrincat, it's like you're getting a guy who, in all you're doing right now.
He's one of the best goal scorers.
Yeah, I know, but like the Flyers, Flyers are going to be rebuilding, and it's like,
but
you're adding a guy like that is going to make, not attempting to lose, but you trying to rebuild is going to make that worse for you as adding a guy who scores a lot.
But it's okay because I mean, we have guys like Hayes, Konechny, and who else? Farabee, and Farabee's coming off of his 6-year deal right now. 6-year deal, right?
Yeah, it's 5 years. That
So
starts this year.
So I really don't know, but like just like a guy like Caulfield, you're going to retain like a lot of money.
Yeah,
to get that kind of guy. Because
well, I think the biggest thing with getting a guy like DeBrincat is the fact that he's an RFA. So all you're gonna get is the rights for him, and the only way you obviously would trade for him is if you wanted to come here. But I don't think Alex DeBrincat will want to come here. So we've already mentioned we're rebuilding, we're doing all this different stuff. Like for me, it just doesn't make any sense to take a swing at any of those guys because we're not in the position to win right now.
Right, just like you told me like last week, like we're not going to get guys like Boldy or Belsky and Robinson in them.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and that's the thing. We're going to be trying to get worse essentially, and not get those guys and try to offload contracts and get as many draft picks as possible.
I mean, Torts said that before. Like it's going to take a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, dude, thanks for calling in, and I'll talk to you next week. All right, buddy.
I'll still be in the old chat.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you.
All right, bye.
Yeah, no. Thanks, Tristan, for calling in. Anybody else wants to ring the line? It's 267-939-1216. Yeah, no, Mr. Twister, I agree with you, dude. I think the biggest thing with Hayes is exactly what you said. He just like stopped playing at times, and it was just like boring. Like his play was just boring to watch. Like he didn't like seem like he really tried at times. He kind of just mailed it in. I think the second first round pick, I really don't know. Like, I think that it kind of depends. Like, this is going to be a different type of draft where it's like a lot of guys could fall because there's just so much talent. So I think there's a good range of guys you could probably get around that pick. It'll be interesting though. I think there's a lot of different variables on who goes where and whatnot. And yeah, I agree, Mr. Chisler. I think we're at least another season. Like, this is really the first year of the rebuild. Like, and I know I've said before, like, that last year, it was, but like the actual committed, like, hey, we're coming out and we are rebuilding, announcement. This is like the first year of that. Even though we've stunk for a couple of years, this is like the first, like, really season of like, hey, we're purposely sucking. You know what I mean? And it's like, now you're kind of getting into that. And it's like, how long can we really stomach that? Like, that's the thing. Everybody was screaming for a rebuild years ago. And I'm like, well, no one's going to stomach that for that long. Hence, and so many different things go into it. But it's like, it's going to take at least two to 3 years. And I know it's like that joke, but it's going to be 2 to 3 years where this team's going to be like kind of bad on purpose, right? You're going to be building through the draft. I mean, we have 10 draft picks. It's the most since 2016. And a couple other years we had 8, we had 9, but we have 10, and they're definitely looking to add more. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens. I'm hoping that they do add that second rounder in between 22 and 87. It just makes the most sense, to be honest. I think one of the things that really helps that out is the fact that you have legit assets here to still kind of move. You could get a second round pick for Scott Lawton if you traded him to the right team. You could definitely get a second in a Hayes deal. You sure as hell could get a second round pick for Travis Konechny if you did move him, even though I don't want them to move Konechny. It's not something that I want. I do think at some point, that there's a a balance of kind of where to add and where not to kind of go off at. And I just think for now, it's to add as many picks as possible. And it wouldn't shock me if they keep adding more picks, you know, in the later rounds and stuff, because it shows that they have their guy, and you know that's what you want. You know, it seems like, you know, you're trying to. It seems like for the Flyers, at least, that they're just trying to add as many picks as possible, and they're still trying to kind of shop Hayes a little bit and kind of drum up the price. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. Joe, I don't know. Our right wing is loaded. I think we need centers. I think we need left wing. Definitely need right-handed defenseman. We don't really need a goaltender, but obviously you probably want to add a goalie. Yeah, a lot of guys drafted at 22 in recent in like all of the NHL. Some of the best number 22 overall picks. I'm gonna look this up because I actually wrote this in our newsletter a couple weeks ago. If anybody wants to kind of check that out, our newsletter for the first edition, the guys picked at 22 in total. I won't list off, you know, I'll just go through the whole thing. You have K'Andre Miller, 2018, Kyler Yamamoto, 2017, Jordan Eberle, 2008, Max Pacioretty, 2007. You have Claude Giroux, like Mr. Twister mentioned here, 2006. Simon Gagne, 1998. Jeff Brown, 1996. Brian Boucher, 1995. Adam Foote, 89. Adam Graves, 1986. Kurt Frazier, Reed Larson, Brian Engblom, Brian Trottier, Rick Kehoe, and Errol Thompson. So like, there's so many different guys that have gone at number 22 and just legit players. I mean, Adam Foote, Giroux, Gagne, like, oh my god. So it'll be interesting for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much all I got for this morning. Thanks everybody for joining me here. Little pre-draft talk and you know, going through everything. Make sure to check out Maher Media, all that stuff, the newsletter as well for this week. Yeah, everything. You know, it's going to be interesting to kind of see what happens here as the season, you know, or the off season, I should say, kind of goes along. Especially this next kind of week or so, because there's going to be a lot of moving parts with this team, and especially if, you know, Hayes and, you know, there's so many different variables, Hayes, Lawton, Konechny, everything. So obviously got the show coming up this week, and I got a pretty big announcement for the show this week, so stay tuned for that. And also the next couple of weeks with the show will be a little bit different. So I'll have my pre-draft show on the 27th. Then I'll have no show on the 4th. Because it's the 4th of July. It's also the night before my birthday, and it's also Mike Knubel's birthday as well. So it's just going to be kind of a weird day. So no show for me because I'm not going to be home. And then the 11th, I'll be back with Mark Howe, and Knubel will be on it for that as well. And then as for that following week, I'll actually be on vacation. So it'll be a little bit weird month of July, but then outside of that, I'm pretty much a show every week. So just wanted to let everybody know about that, since a lot of the people that are in here are usually on the show, stuff like that as well. So thanks everybody again for all the support. As always, Mr. Twister, Joe Fisher, Guy 1811, which I agree. I hope they don't trade Konechny as well. I think he seems like the other side of the Konechny argument is like, well, you need to sell tickets. And I genuinely do think people will go to the game to watch Travis Konechny. The fact that you have that many people and that many fans that like absolutely love Konechny, I think there's a huge reason for that. Mr. Twister, thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. Have a good one as well. Vincenzo, Tristan, Dylan, Sean, bunch of different people in here. Thanks everybody so much for all the support this morning. And yeah, I will talk to you guys all again soon. Thanks, guys.